Okay, Rabbi Michael, please teach us. Before you start, I need us to do the share for Yehoshua ben Sarah. It's very serious, very critical. So
and
your mom and
there was
a
35-year-old guy that died today.
I can't hear you, Kev.
Can you hear me now? And now? Can you hear me?
Well, not well.
Can you hear me now? Now?
It's very soft.
Let me take it. Is it very... Okay, you know what? It might be the computer. Let me just increase the computer volume. Now, is that better?
A little bit, but you had it right a minute ago. You had it close to you, and then it just faded.
And now? If I hold it here?
Yeah, better.
Okay. Yeah, I'm saying there was a 35-year-old Jewish guy that died today at his funeral. My friend Ian Davis went to it, who Gavin also knows.
I don't know him, though.
No, you don't, I don't know if you know the guy, no, but Ian went to a funeral today.
Yeah, I saw the guy's name. It was on Facebook. Yeah, I saw a picture of him. I don't know him.
Yeah. Okay. This is going to be a short one. One at a time is better. It's okay. So the refer Shlema for Yehoshua ben Sarah.
Yeah.
And Shifra Simcha Bat Yeta and all Cholim of Klal Yisrael.
Amen.
And may they have a speedy refer Shlema. Okay.
Amen.
Okay. The next malacha. So this is actually a very short one. It's laundering, which is called melabain. Mem lamed bet nun sofit. Melabain. Okay, there are 5 prohibitions. The first one, so any activity used in the process of laundering, namely, and then there's 5 here, soaking fabric in order to pre-wash, loosening dirt or bacteria. Second one, removing the dirt and bacteria by means of scrubbing or other frictional movement. Spinning, squeezing, or wringing fabric to remove water, detergent, or other liquid. Hanging up laundry to dry. And the 5th one, ironing or pressing. So let's just go back to B, removing the dirt and bacteria by means of scrubbing or other frictional movements. So with that probably, the other 4 we probably know are prohibited. But this one here, if you have like a mark on your pants or something on a Shabbos, you want to clean it, and it's or on your, like from your shoes, or you there's a dust mark, you can't actually wipe it off, because that's removing that's removing dirt, scrubbing or frictional movement. Even if you go with your fingers like that, you can't actually do that. It's I know it's difficult. I do that sometimes, and so this is the one which is probably most challenging for all of us, because we know we can't wring clothes out, you can't wash, you can't iron. That's pretty self-explanatory, but that one's the most probably that we may not be conscious of sometimes. That's the one.
I wonder what happens with that example if, let's say, you spill something on your pants and you're out and you actually can't change it. You have to go to shul, and you're going to look like a disgrace if you go like that. I wonder what the story is there, because
I know it's because you don't want to look and be embarrassed, and but
it's like a Chilul Hashem as well. You know, if you look disgusting,
if you're a frum guy, yes, exactly, that's right.
If you're a frum guy. So I must actually bounce it off. What you're saying is right. It is correct. You can't touch anymore. But I need to check with Rabbi Abba. What do you do in a case?
Seriously, yeah. There must
if it's going to be like a Chilul Hashem, and you look and you've got a big coffee stain, can you rinse it out or something? If you've got nothing else, no access to anything else.
Maybe you can throw water on it, but you can't rub it with your. Maybe you can throw stuff.
So even to throw water helps a lot. It helps a lot.
It's like certain things you can spray, like what's it like? I had anti-inflammatory ointment, and I wanted to apply to myself. You just put it on. You can't rub it in. There's certain ways of doing things that aren't gonna allow.
Yeah, you can't rub it. You can just dab it on. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. But
so maybe you could put water on a mug and maybe just dab it, like with your hand.
Just sprinkle water on it and leave it. Don't touch it.
Yeah.
Ask him anyway. I'd like to know, because there must be.
It happens a lot. It
happens to all of us. Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, let Damon continue. Thanks, Kevin. Scott.
Okay, so I don't want it's a short one, but do one at a time. Otherwise, it's too much to absorb.
Okay.
100%.
And also during the week,
Okay.
well, on Shabbos, laundering is prohibited, but during the week, money laundering is also prohibited. Okay. Including ringing things out on Shabbos and drug rings during the week. So it's all
Yeah.
prohibited. Okay. So I've got this, speaking of drug induced, I've got this cat in my way, but I'm going to do my best. This COVID thing is very scary, actually. Very scary.
Very much so.
All right.
How's Margaret doing?
Not her health is good, but she is panicking.
Right.
And is there any improvement from Jeff?
So let's not do this on a public show, other than just davening for him.
Okay, will you edit that?
Just say that name again of his name. I just need it so I can daven for him.
Yehoshua ben Sarah.
I think put it on the group, but I think that Damon, so just edit out what I just said and Gavin just said.
Yeah, with pleasure.
Okay, thanks. Sorry about that. Didn't really. Yeah. Okay, good.
Okay. All right. So, just give me a sense. All right. So look, we dealt with the issue of Rav Acha bar Yaakov, and Rav Nachman's response to him. We're now at 48.4. So the Gemara is basically returning to a question of whether change in jurisdiction is going to cause an animal to revert from a muad status to a tam status. The Gemara is now citing a brasa that bears upon this issue. That is correct. Gab, we'll do messages afterwards, but
I didn't send a message.
It popped on my phone now.
No. Oh, no, yeah, but that's nothing to do with this Shiva. Sorry.
Yeah, but it pops on my screen.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Okay, no problem. So, all right, hang on a second. I'll tell you what we're going to do. Just let me just look at the time in terms of recording editing. So let me start again now. Sorry, Gavin, it's just when things pop on the screen.
That's fine.
It's no problem. But listen, thanks for davening for him. I appreciate it, seriously. Okay.
Pleasure.
Let's get started. So, all right, now the Gemara is going to deal with the question about does the change of jurisdiction from the court-appointed agent cause the animal to revert from a muad to a tam status if those that have been cognitively impaired return with their faculties? Meaning, if the deaf-mute can suddenly speak and hear, the mentally incompetent becomes sane, and the minor becomes a legal adult. Or the person coming from overseas, for that matter, while he's away, returns to look after his animal. That's also included in the list in some of these categories. So the rabbis taught in the Brisa, if one borrowed an ox on the assumption that it was tam, and it's found to be a muad, if it galled while under the borrower's care, the owner pays half damages and the borrower pays half damages. Okay. So before we go on, why do you think that is, guys?
You're saying it's tam, the borrower, the owner and the agent. You say borrower, or the owner and the borrower? Is that what you said?
So I'm saying, look, basically, it's saying, it's talking about now jurisdictional changes. It's bringing up a separate brisa, and it's saying, all right, Kevin, you own an ox, and I borrow the ox from you, but you don't tell me that the ox is muad, okay? And I borrowed thinking that the ox is tame, and in my care it does damage. Because you failed to inform me, I don't pay full damages because I wasn't aware when I borrowed it that the ox was muad. Yeah, I pay half the damages because I was under the assumption that the ox is tam, and you pay half the damages as the owner of the ox because you failed to inform me correctly. Does that make sense? Okay. Guys, if you hang on for me 1 second, this cat is driving me bonkers. It won't get off my keyboard. I don't know. It can be in the garden the whole day and it comes now. Just give me a sec.
Gavin.
Yeah.
Should I take that cat to Israel when I go back?
Yeah. And then when they have that thing at the Kollel.
It's not coming to my house.
No, when they have that big Cohen thing, then you can take all the cats that you know.
Yeah, but that's Mrs. Cats and her children.
Where's to have cats and children?
No, Mrs. Cats, her husband, Mr. Cats, and the children.
100%.
All right, guys. Gav, let's continue. Whose phone is that?
It's mine, but I'll just put it on silent. Okay,
sorry. If it's a business call, you can take it with pleasure.
No. It's just the WhatsApp. It's fine. Go ahead.
All right. So let's go on. So now we're saying, all right. So there's a second part to this particular brisa. If one borrowed an ox and it became muad in the house of the borrower, okay, and it was returned to the owners and it gored there, the owners pay half damages and the borrower is exempt from paying anything. Kev, you got the story?
Yeah.
So the second one is basically, I borrow the ox from you and under my care it becomes muad. Then when I return it to you, basically, and it goes under your jurisdiction as the original owner, the muad is only if it's under my jurisdiction. When it returns to you, it comes back to the tam status. And I, as the borrower, don't have to pay anything because it's back with you. That's all we're saying. Does that make sense? Okay, good. Let's go on. So, the Gemara is analyzing this brisa. The master stated, if one borrowed an ox on the assumption that it's tam and it's found to be a muad, the owners pay half damages and the borrower pays half damages. But why is the borrower liable? Why would the borrower be liable? Let him tell the owner, I borrowed an ox, I didn't borrow a lion. So that's obviously a euphemism for saying that he accepted upon himself only guarding of a tam, which generally doesn't cause damage. He didn't know that this was a wildly aggressive animal, as he termed it, a lion, that required a careful guarding. So the damage came to pass because the owner withheld this information. Therefore, the borrower should be exempt from even paying half damages. That's what the Gemara is proposing. Why should he even pay half damages? Now, I'd like to ask you guys something as far as this is concerned. Why shouldn't he even pay full damages? Because the Gemara is saying, look, why should he? The Gemara is basically saying, look, we understand that the owner misinformed him. Okay? So therefore, he only has to pay the tam because he was informed it was tam. And now, in this particular case, he's saying, why should I even have to pay the tam? Because basically, this animal was wildly aggressive. So that's going on. So that's a bit of an issue. Why shouldn't he pay? Firstly, why shouldn't he pay half? Because he borrowed it under the assumption it was tam. And furthermore, why is the Gemara assuming that he should be exempt on this basis?
So I can add something.
Please do.
So my thoughts on this would be as follows: that when it's a tam, it has to be a superior guarding nonetheless. There's a scriptural verse saying that it has to be a superior guarding. So the fact that the borrower wasn't aware that the animal was muad or close to muad or on his final tam, so he would have been muad on the next hit. It's not his. It's his fault for at least half the payment because of that fact. He should have done a superior guarding no matter what. And because he didn't do that, he negligent. obviously he was misinformed, so he's only responsible for the half lot.
Excellent. I couldn't agree with Gavin more. Is the fact of it is, and that's what I was alluding to, and well done for remembering, because basically the borrower is turning around and saying, look, he borrowed it under false premise because he didn't know it was muad, and Gavin's saying exactly that if we look at that scriptural verse in Exodus, whether you go according to Rabbi Meir, that says equally for tam and muad, that a superior guarding is required, because the chidush there is obviously for muad, an aggressive animal, you know that. But the whole point is the biblical verse is saying that you've got to actually look equally as stringently after a tame animal. That's why the biblical verse is there. And if you don't want to hold like that, and you want to hold like Rabbi Akiva, that a muad guarding is a lesser guarding and a higher guarding, superior guarding is tam, that's an argument against this borrower, because it's saying, listen, if it's muad, why should the original owner even have to pay the muad section if he didn't inform you? Because a lesser guarding would have sufficed, a superior guarding would have sufficed for tam, but a lesser guarding would have sufficed to get him, the owner, off the hook for muad. So he doesn't have to pay you anything for muad, according to Rabbi Yehuda. But for tam, there's no biblical verse that lets you off the hook, except we learned obviously from Rav Eliezer, where a proper guarding is required, but not a superior. But even in that particular case, even for tam, if you thought it was tam, you still have to pay as far as that's concerned. Gavin is completely correct. So why should you be exempt from paying anything? Okay, well done, Gavin.
Can I just say something? I was going to say
sure.
I was actually going to say something similar, not as eloquently as you, but almost. But so the bottom line is, this ox, even though he thought it was tam, it damaged while it was in his possession anyway.
Correct.
So then he should be allowed he shouldn't be, if it then he sort of doesn't have a leg to stand on in a way.
Yeah, he should. You know what? Because I understand, look, I'm paying the muad part. And the truth of it is, I shouldn't even have to if you go according to Rabbi Yehuda. According to Rabbi Meir and the rabbis, yes. But I'm paying the muad part. So what are you complaining about? Had you thought it was tam, that's why you're only paying tam. I haven't made you pay the muad because I failed to disclose. So pay the tam. Now you want to turn around and say you're not paying anything. Well, we learned in this case of a custodian, guys, that the custodian, the borrower, who's doing the borrower a favor? The owner. It's not like a paid custodian, because remember, Gavin, that a paid custodian has got less responsibility than a borrower, because the paid custodian, in fact, let me not put it like that, not a paid custodian, because the paid custodian is earning. So he has to look after it in a superior way. But an unpaid custodian is doing the person a favor to look after his ox while he goes overseas. Okay? The borrower, he's doing the borrower a favor. Again, the borrower doesn't have the item. He needs it. The guy's doing him a favor, and what? This guy's going to incur a debt for the owner for doing him a favor. Nothing doing. As a custodian of a borrower, he owes a debt of gratitude to the one he borrowed the animal from. And in that basis, we can't even see he can be off the hook at all. Okay? And his only possible argument, Gavin, could be that he wouldn't have borrowed it had it been tame, because most tame animals are quite docile. But then the borrower should have asked the question and said, look, even though this animal is tame, has it gored at least 1 out of 3 times, 2 out of 3 times, 3 out of 3 times? Do you know what I'm saying? In other words, if it's 0 out of 3 times, he's got a claim. The guy says never gored, and then we found out it's muad. But if it's gored 2 out of 3 times, do me a favor. What do you think is going to happen? You think this thing's calm? So, all right. So this is the answer that the Gemara gives, right? So he said, look, Rav said, with what are we dealing with here? With a case where the borrower was aware that the ox was a gora. In other words, that it had an aggressive nature. So therefore, notwithstanding its alleged tam status, he should have guarded it, Since he didn't, he failed in his duty, is therefore liable for half damages. So that's exactly what I said to you, that, it could have gored at least 3 times. So he was aware that it at least gored. Might not have been to the extent of the after the 3rd time where it was officially warned, but he was aware that it had gored at least once. And therefore it's got some sort of track record as being muad. Does that make sense? So he doesn't have a leg to stand on, as you guys are saying. Exactly correct. So then the Gemara asks further, but let the borrower tell the owner, I borrowed a tam, I didn't borrow muad. He can argue that true. He didn't give the animal the guarding it required as a tam. However, since the animal was in fact a muad, he should be exempt. So the Gemara answers no. He's liable because the owner can say to him, look, in the final analysis, even if the ox had been a tam, you would have had to have paid half damages since you didn't guard it correctly. Now, although the animal is proved to be muad, go pay your half damages. I'm already paying half damages because I didn't disclose that. I'm paying for that. But as that biblical verse said, you have to do a superior guarding for tam, as quite Gavin reminded us. So therefore, pay your tam. I'm paying the muad, so what are you complaining about? Fine. So the Gemara goes backwards and forwards. Let the borrower tell the owner, had the ox been tam, the half damages would have been paid from its body. They would have cost me nothing. Now that it's been proved to be muad, I must pay from my own pocket. So the muad status has caused the borrower to have to pay. Since the owner didn't inform him of its status, the borrower should be exempt. So what are we saying here? Is that basically the borrower can argue that the animal, if it had been a tam, the damage it inflicted wouldn't have cost him anything, because despite his failure to guard it, the half damage payment of the tam is taken only from the body of the animal that gored. Since the animal belongs to the owner, its seizure by the damaged party would have cost the borrower nothing. It's only now that the animal is proved to be muad that the borrower must pay from his own assets. Accordingly, the failure of the borrower to guard what he thought was a tam shouldn't have rendered him liable. It should make the owner liable for that. So, guys, what would be your response to that if you were the owner? We're playing cat and mouse here. What would be that your response? Kevin, you have an idea? If I give you this accusation.
Something a bit out of left field. Even though one should know anyway, even if before an ox even becomes a tam, that an ox has the potential to gore, so people should take care anyway, even if before it even becomes a tam. They should be aware of that. They should know that an ox with horns can potentially damage someone. So people should have the bit of okay.
That's what the biblical verse, as Gavin reminded us in Exodus, tells us. Exactly that. That if you would think that you don't have to regard a tam because it doesn't have a track record, you have to give it a superior guarding, assuming it's going to go. Absolutely correct. But if I turn around to you and I say to you, listen, if it was tam, it wouldn't have cost me anything. The animal is your damaging animal. That's where you pay the payment from. So it wouldn't have cost me. It would have cost you. What would be your answer to that cheeky borrower? Guys?
He should have guarded. He should have been careful and guarded it.
No. But I'm looking for a specific answer.
He could have said that if he had known about the thing, he could make it difficult for the guy. And the other part is if he was muad from the body, muad, and he had to pay the muad, he said, but that'll have to come out of my estate, not from the body of the animal.
Okay, you're jumping the gun, but I appreciate the fact.
Too far?
No. I appreciate the fact that you're present, mate. I do. So I tell you what answer I'm looking for. You turn around to me as the borrower and you say, listen, had I caused the damage, you would have had to pay from your attacking animal. I would have said to you, nonsense. What do you think? That you can borrow my article, I'm doing you a favor, and I must pick up damages for something that you do. Let me ask you something, Arthur. You borrow my car, and I do you a favor and lend you the car, and you create a 5-car pileup, I must pay for your damages.
Yeah, it was your faulty brakes. I didn't know you had faulty brakes. That's good. No, I know what you're saying. It's kind of like if you got a gun, that gun has potential to shoot. So you should actually put that gun in a safe and protect it, not just leave it lying around.
Yeah,
Same
but
concept. If I borrow your
I'm
car,
using the example of a
if
car.
I borrow your gun, okay. If I borrow your car and it's your car, you do me a favor,
Correct.
okay? And I wrap it around a tree or something like that.
Or more importantly,
then
you hit a Porsche, right? Now the Porsche owner comes to me, and I say, I turn around and I say, listen, you owe me damages. And the person that borrows my car said, well, it's your car, you pay for the damages. What a cheeky little person. The truth of it is, that's not the case by halacha. That's what we learn. It's not the case at all. Because the Gemara says, look, at the end of the day, in the final analysis, even if the half damage payment would have been taken from the animal's body. So let me just give you a modern example. My car, somebody borrows, and they take my car, and it smacks a Porsche. Then the owner decides he doesn't know if I'm insured or whatever. He grabs the car keys from the borrower and takes my Mercedes convertible as collateral until he knows that he's going to get paid for my Porsche. And the borrower says, well, he's got your milk. It has nothing to do with me. The law states, as the response, would you not have been required to repay me for the ox? Of course you would have. Since even the animal had been a tam, the borrower would have been liable for half damages even now. So it's not even a legal argument. He has to pay him back by law. So then the borrower is going to, again, come up with some other argument to the owner. So that argument doesn't have any water. By law, if you're borrowing an article and it does damage, you have to, and they seize that article, you have to release that article for the owner by paying the debt. That's what we're saying here in a nutshell. Okay, quickly. Had the ox been a tam, I would have confessed my liability and I'd be exempt. For half damages of a tam is regarded as a knas, a fine, and confession exempts one from paying liability for this. So it's only because of the animal's muad status that the borrower must pay. Since he was not informed of the status, he should be exempt. Okay. So what we're saying there in a nutshell is as follows, is that the half damage payment is not necessarily compensation. There's a discussion in the 15th daf we learned that it's a fine levied upon the owner of the beast that bought. And it's basically, what did we learn? That if a knas has three elements to it. Okay? The first one is it's a fixed amount. Do you remember when we learned in the 15th daf, we said one of the reasons that some of the rabbis consider this a mammon, a compensation, is because it's not a fixed amount. For a seducer, a rapist, etc., a defamer, there's 50 shekels, 100 shekels, there's a set amount, right? So one of the indications that it's not a penalty, according to some opinions, is it's not a set amount. How do we know? You pay whatever half damages are caused. So if you attack an ox, your ox attacks an ox with 300 zuz, you're paying 150. If you attack a 120 zuz ox, you're paying 60. Is that a fixed payment? Is that a fixed payment, guys?
No.
No, it's not, because it varies according to the ox you damage.
The value.
Yes, so that's not fixed. It's not like what you pay in terms of a levy for theft. Because what's the fixed payment, Gavin, for theft?
It's fixed payment is double, isn't it?
Correct. It's double. So you might say the amount alters. So therefore, it's not the same. But the Gemara is saying no. It's 100% you pay for compensation and 100% penalty. The percentile stays the same. But the does that make sense? So those that argue that tam payment is actually a percentile, it's 50%, are arguing that the amount might differ, but again, it's a percentile like theft. So therefore, they want to argue it's a penalty. So according to those rabbis that argue it's a penalty, I say to Kevin cheekily when I borrow his car, okay, or his ox or whatever, I would have said, listen, it's a penalty, this tam payment. So all I have to do is go and confess it, and then I don't have to pay the tam. By you not telling me it's muad, it's now all of a sudden nothing I can confess to. So now I'm paying half damages when I didn't have to pay half damages at all. That's his cheeky response. You get what I'm saying? Guys, yes, no, you with me?
Yes.
Okay, so yes, I need to know yes that you're with me. Good. All right. So what do you think the response to that is, guys?
From the owner.
Yeah.
When he comes and says that he's not responsible for the muad because he wasn't informed.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying as the borrower, I'm turning around to you and said, look, listen, you got me in trouble here. The reason I'm saying that I shouldn't pay anything, the reason I'm saying that I shouldn't pay anything at all, never mind half damages, is because the only reason I'm paying half damages is because your ox was really muad, and as the owner, you never informed me. Now I'm involved for half payment damages. According to the rabbis that say tam is a knas, all I had to do was go and confess it before it came to court, and you don't have to pay a penalty. Do you remember we learned that in the 15th daf?
So what's the penalty here? The half payment?
Yes, because what we're saying is for theft. Say you stole an ox. No, not an ox, because an ox you pay times 5 and a sheep you pay times 4 for an ox, and a sheep you pay times 5. Let's just say you stole a cell phone or a laptop, okay? So at that point, you don't have to pay anything because nobody knows you have it. You have a guilt trip, you turn around and you quickly go to the base din and you say, look, I did bad. I stole the laptop. They said, pay back the laptop, give it back. So no problem. There's no penalty because you confessed before, wasting the court's time. You with me?
But that's only if you treat the half payment as a penalty.
No, that's correct. But there are some rabbis that do.
Yes,
That was the whole discussion. So there's no discussion if you consider it a mammon compensation. But according to the rabbis that hold it as a tam, there is a discussion. So why should you pay anything? Okay? Because it would be interesting how they deal with this verse in Exodus, by the way, that you need a superior guarding. But that's the reason, by the way, that you have to seize the animal quickly. Because the minute you seize an animal, it's public knowledge. So you damage me, I quickly seize your animal, I'll go to court. The guy can't all of a sudden either hide the animal away or quickly confess and say I did wrong, because it's a cat and mouse game. He wants to quickly confess to get off the hook. But the minute it becomes public knowledge and you quickly lodge it with the court, say, he stole, damaged. He won't get a chance. So it's a race to the court.
But why is the confession? I don't understand how you can. Sorry, I did read it on Saturday. I've just forgotten a bit. I just want to see if I got it clear. What's he confessing to? What's he done wrong? I mean, I don't understand why he's given that opportunity to confess.
Okay. Before we go, I'm trying to
ox. Yeah.
I know I'm trying to answer you. So if we go back to the 15th stuff, we say, look, what's the classic case here? Is that we want to avoid the court being tied up with legal matters. That's the point. So extraneous legal matters that could be sorted out amicably between two parties with a mediator or an arbitrator is better than wasting the Beis Din's time if they can come to a reasonable arrangement. Otherwise, it basically takes resources. So there are certain things that are seen as a penalty. Among them, this is what the rule is, right? We don't want to clog up the court. So anything that can sort it out amicably, we try and do this. The penalties are there because you're getting cute and you're trying to circumvent the legal process, or you're trying to avoid accountability. Okay? So what we're saying is cases, one of the reasons that tam is considered a kanasa penalty is because it is a tame ox, it is tame, but because of this biblical sort of verse, okay, because of this biblical sort of verse, you've got an obligation to be aware it can attack. Therefore, you should look after it. It's there to put you off. Now, what happens is they want expedient trials, or they want expedient arrangements. So what has to happen is the person that's damaged has to quickly not allow time to waste. Why shouldn't time waste? Because memories get faded the more time transpires, Gavin. So what happens is, I damage you. The first thing you need to do is quickly you either seize my animal immediately, okay, on the scene of the accident or whatever, seize the car, or anything you do, you seize it, right? Or immediately you go and put in a police report. That's what you do with an accident. If you don't think the guy's insured and you've got the physical stamina to seize the asset until you get paid for security as collateral, you do it. Or you put in a police report. I'm talking about the days before insurance and you lodge a court case. Right, fine. If you, as a damaged party, didn't wake up in time and the guy quickly goes to confess and says, listen, I did wrong, I had an accident, we're not going to trouble the court because you weren't in any urgent rush as the damaged party. Does that make sense? So for whatever reason, it's put as a knas. So that being some of the rabbis' opinions, all that's happening here is, as the borrower, I'm saying, listen, you never informed me of it was muad. Had you informed me, I never would have borrowed this thing. Because if I'd have borrowed it and it was still under tam status, I would have immediately gone before the Beis Din and declared what had happened, so I'm off the hook with payment for those rabbis that see it as a knas, a penalty. Does that make sense? Those are the rules.
So he's trying to avoid going to.
Correct.
He's trying to avoid.
Correct. And the thing of it is, this is the lesson. Whenever somebody damages you, you seize their property or you immediately lodge a legal case or a police report. You've got to be quick. It's you know what I mean. You've got to be really, really quick. So the thing of it is, that's the argument. So the owner can only say, look, there's some rabbis that say it's compensation. But, that's all he can say at this stage. Or he can turn around and say, look, there's a biblical verse that says that you're not off the hook, and I've immediately, as the owner, the damaged party, if I was the owner and you gave me this sort of shtick, I would have said, look, the damaged party's already filed a police report. I'm sorry, you can't confess. It wouldn't have made a difference had it been Tam. We've got one person cleaning glasses, one person cleaning their fingers, and one person cleaning the floor.
I'm very quick with this. Sorry,
I've got 3 cleaners working for me.
But you can't see me, Dan. Am I making a noise?
All right, it's just I'd really like your attention.
I am focused. I need to do this. I've got a problem with my hands. It doesn't take long. Sorry, carry on.
All right, so Gavin, look, my response to you, if you said this at the borough that you would have gotten off the hook by quickly confessing, I would have said, you know what? The damaged party's already filed a police report. Tough. Because I'm already irritated. Believe me. So then
I just want to get, what is that borrower actually confessing? He's going to go to the court and confess what?
That he failed to look after a tame animal. And for those rabbis that see it as a penalty, he's quickly lodging it before there's in the court case against him.
But is he preventing, would he be charged double when the court case happens?
No, but there's some rabbis that say that he shouldn't even be paid a ton because the ox is in fact tame. He shouldn't pay anything. It's just there to make him wake up.
He's confessing that this incident happened, or is he confessing that the guy he borrowed the ox from never informed him correctly, or misinformed him?
No,
is that what he's going to?
No. He's saying that I borrowed a tame. He's saying that, listen, the tame ox in my key did damage. That's all he's saying. Gavin, the argument. Gavin, just hear this again. I'm going to try again. His argument against the owner is that the owner landed him in trouble here. because by not telling him it was muad, he now can't get out of his half payment penalty by a confession, because the muad means it's compensation by all rabbinic opinions, which means he has to pay the half. And he's saying, as the borrowed party, that he's saying, listen, I would have had my ace in the hole, and the minute this incident would have happened, I know many of the rabbis say the time is just a penalty and you don't even have to pay it. And if you confess before there's a court lodging, you're off the hook, because it's meant to just deter somebody from not looking after the animal. But it's really a tame animal. So that's what some of the rabbis hold. So he says, listen, according to those opinions, I'm going to go to the court and say, I'm clear. But now you've involved me because you never told me it was muad. Now I have to pay that half, but I shouldn't have paid anything, because I would have gone with the rabbi's opinions that said you don't even have to pay the knas, the penalty, if you quickly admit it to the court. Okay? So now by not telling me, you've obligated me to half. That's why I shouldn't pay anything, because I wouldn't have had to. It had been tam if I quickly confessed. And as the owner,
so if you quickly confessed, then what would have happened? Who would have paid?
No one.
What you're saying now?
No one. For the rabbis that say it's a penalty, no one.
So if, despite this case, anywhere, as we've been going through Bava Kamma, anywhere along the line, if anybody's time animal attacked another animal, if you ran to the court and confessed, you wouldn't have to pay the time portion ever.
According to the rabbis that hold like that, there's half, call it.
Okay, right. Okay, I got you now. Got you. Thank you. All right,
but this is why people seized an animal. This is exactly why. Because the minute the damaged party sees the animal, that is seen as testimony. There's a special law. I'm going to go through it in halacha just now, towards the middle of the stuff. Okay, but that means that it's already as if it's been lodged in court, because another party has seized the animal. So, if you were damaged in those times, okay, the quickest thing you do is you either have the manpower to wrestle the asset that damaged, or if you don't, because the guy's a 6-foot giant and you 5'2", and you don't, you run to the court faster than your little legs can carry you, Gavin, and you lodge a police report before this guy has a chance to confess. You run there first. Then you can obligate him.
So all those rabbis that hold by the fact that it's a penalty as opposed to compensation, they would all allow this, yeah?
Yes.
If the guy confesses, he won't have to, even if it's his own animal, even if it's not part of it.
Correct. And the reason why is because those rabbis said, listen, you shouldn't pay anything. This is a relaxed animal. We're just giving you a half payment just to give you a fright for the future. You get it? Fine. So listen, I would just say as the owner to this borrower, I'd say, you know what? The damaged party has already filed a police report. Sorry. You wouldn't have got off the hook. He ran to the police station immediately. He knows you're up to no good. I'm saying that would be my argument back. So then he tries again. The borrower says, you know what? Had I known it was a tam, I would have done something else even. I would have hid the animal away. I would have taken it to a swamp. Okay? Because we learned this rule of tam. What rule did we learn? If you don't present the animal, you can't have a claim.
So you would have hid the animal after it committed the
yes. And I would have turned around to you, Gavin, and I said, your animal damaged me. You turn around and say, what animal? What am I going to do? Because in tam, I'm basically, when it's muad, I'm collecting the money from choice property or your cash. Okay? But if it's tam, I have to collect it from that attacking animal. If you say to me, what attacking animal? What am I going to do? So then the Gemara basically has a side note. It says, well, he can't hide the animal in the swamp forever. What happens then? So, he's going to have to bring it out of the swamp at some time. So the answer is then maybe what the guy will do, the borrower, is you'll slaughter the animal and eat it. And remember, we learned that if you damage an article, do you remember if I said there was a lien on a property and you burn the lien document, you basically the person can't collect their property. I borrow money from you. You have a lien document from me, and I break in your house and I steal that document, that contract. You've got no evidence. If I bomb the property that I was going to give as collateral to you, and it looks like a tenth of its value, there's nothing you can do about it. We learned this. So if you slaughtered the ox, and I say I've taken mere wind from your animal, there's very little you can do about it. So if I slaughtered it in the swamp and ate it, where's your evidence? Can't do anything. Can't do anything. There's no animal. I pooped it out in the toilet. It was a wonderful steak.
Yeah, Kevin's comment, the guy claims his steak. Listen, when he hides it away, I just want to ask you something.
Yes.
Can't we use, for the muad, if the animal becomes muad, if you follow those two rabbis that we did like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, Rabbi Yaakov and Rabbi, remember they said you can take the muad from the half portion of the body. That would be a huge help here for this one, for the borrower.
No, it would actually be against them. I'll tell you why. It's a brilliant point, but it would be against them. Let me tell you why. Brilliant point, but against them. If we hold like Rabbi Yehuda, that the tam portion remains in its place, okay, and Rav Yaakov, okay, there's a problem. There's a problem. Let me tell you what the problem is that I can at least get my money back as the damaged party if I say it's gone muad and now I've got to collect from your choice property or cash. Now I'm protected. Okay? The problem is, if I'm the damaged party and we say the tam portion stays in its place and the muad you only have to pay, according to Rav Yehuda, the balance, and for a lesser guarding you're not obligated in paying muad, the owner then doesn't have to pay the muad section, even if he didn't declare it because it was a lesser guarding, number one. And then the tam portion that you're trying to extract from the borrower, you can't because the animals either been eaten by you or lying in a swamp you can't find. That's the problem. So the other issue is as follows. Is the only other argument you could have against the borrower from that is you would have said, listen, as far as the muad is concerned, that ox, if that ox was not, another problem, Gavin, say that ox, for example, in the point you raised, that ox was the guy's only asset and he didn't have property like farmland or whatever. And that muad ox disappeared. The guy didn't have cash. You're in a pickle as the damaged party. You're in trouble. Okay, you are in trouble. So, I tell you what. How long have we got? You guys have to make mincha on time.
It's not going to
No, there's no shul. There's no minyan. No, they.
Okay, but what time do we need to finish the shir bar so you're in time for mincha? You give me a time.
No, I'd say David Mincha by like 5:25 because it's
fine.
Like,
So
probably shkia now. It's probably shkia in the next few minutes. Wow. So 5:20.
Okay, so we'll finish so far.
Yeah.
Let's cover. So, what case are we dealing here with? So basically, if he says, look, I could have hidden up and out in a swamp or whatever, the Gemara says, look, what case are we dealing with here? A case in which the court acted first and seized the ox before the borrower had an opportunity to hide it in a swamp or confess. So in other words now, what happened is the court seized the ox before the borrower decided to hide it in a swamp or eat it or confess it under the guise of the fact that tam is, according to some of the rabbis, a penalty, a knas. Okay? So the court seized it. Now, he doesn't have it. So since the ox was immediately seized by the court, the borrower cannot make either claim that he would have confessed or that he would have hidden it. He can't claim that he would have confessed because confession is effective only if the court doesn't yet know of the misdeed. Also, in seizing the ox, The court no doubt acted on the word of two witnesses. They couldn't have seized it without two witnesses. Since the court knows of the sin from the witnesses, the borrower's confession wouldn't have exempted him. That's according to Torah's Chaim. As for his claim that he would have hidden the ox, once it's in the hands of the court, it's impossible to hide it. So under normal circumstances, the court would not trouble to seize a muad ox because the damage payment of a muad need not be collected from its body. However, the Gemara, the Ravad, is saying, what happens if there's a case where the guy has no other assets? So then you would seize it from the ox, okay? Now, there's a different reading of the Gemara that some Rishonim have. They say it was actually seized by the damaged party. Okay, it was seized by the and if you want to turn around and say, well, the damaged party is one person, there's no witnesses, there's no two witnesses, there's an answer to that. What's the answer? Because it's basically saying that there's basically a case where, how do I put it in law, where there's a case called a migor argument. Do you know what migor means in Hebrew, Kevin?
Mm-mm.
It means since. So the argument goes like
Oh,
this,
me.
Gavin.
Okay.
Migor, since. So since I could have taken it, Gavin, and not given it back to you, and I didn't have to declare the matter public, because if I kidnapped your ox, I kidnapped it as a damaged party, then you go and say I stole it, and I say, no, I've got my dead ox here as evidence that you killed my ox. Then it's proof. It's proof. So the minute the ox's owner steals it, the minute the damaged party confiscates it, the person that did owned the ox that did the damage can't claim the damaged party stole it, because if the police go to arrest him, he'll say, look, here's my dead ox. I merely seized it as collateral. I want a court date. So that acts as witnesses. Now he can't go to the court and say I did wrong and confess, because it's public knowledge now. You hear? All right. So that's so basically, if so that the court sees the ox, why do the owners even pay half damages? Let them tell the borrower, you have delivered my ox into the hands of one whom I can't litigate my claim. In other words, the court. Or maybe you could say the damaged party. Because by allowing the court to seize the ox, the borrower compelled the owner to pay. Therefore, he should be required to reimburse the animal for the full value of his animal. Now the owner's got a complaint against the borrower. His complaint is, well, what were you doing? You just borrowed my animal. Why did you hand over my car keys and my car either to the damaged party or the court? It's my car. Now you're making me pay. So the argument that the borrowers have got against that is said, listen, had I returned the car to you, you don't think the damaged party would have laid a legal claim against you or put a police case against you? What do you think? This would have gone away just because that court would have taken the ox or the car directly from you? Yes, they forced me to give it. But what would you have done? So then the owner says, well, I would have hidden it away. Okay? But it would have been very difficult to hide it away. He said, if you hadn't given it to the court, I would have hidden it away and pulled your stunt. So why should I have to pay anything? Which is a clever argument, right? Guys, are you following? So let the owner tell the borrower, had you returned it to me, I would have driven the animal out of the swamp and hidden there. So the Gemara rejects the argument as well. Why? Because the claim wouldn't have availed the owner to anything, because the borrower can say to him, in the final analysis, would you not have had to have paid from choice property? In other words, he's calling his argument back. He said, you know your ox was muad. I didn't. So you would have had to pay from choice property. You couldn't have hid this animal in a swamp. That's the buyer's response to the owner for handing over the car, the asset, to the court or the damaged party. Do you see what's going on? Kevin, what I'm saying is here, I'm the owner of the ox or the car. Gavin borrowed it, landed up in an accident. Now I said to Gavin, where's my car? Where's my ox? Gavin said he gave it to the court of the damaged party. I said, how can you do that? It's not yours to give away. Gavin turns around to me as the borrower and said, look, what do you think? This legal case would have gone away. And I said, yeah, it would have gone away because they needed evidence in the car. I could have sold the car in the interim, sold it for scrap, whatever. Then the result of Gavin's answer to me is saying, listen, it's muad. The ox is muad, meaning that they're not going to collect the damages from the attacking ox. They're going to collect it from choice property. You could have slaughtered the animal, hid it in a swamp, or done anything. They still would have collected it from choice property because the animal was muad. Does that make sense? So this is the argument.
1, 2, and 3 for muad. It doesn't work for.
It doesn't make for muad. As far as Tom is concerned, he's got a valid argument, but the point of it is then the borrower would have to pay back the owner if the court seized it anyway, because the borrower legally has to either hand it over to the court, but if the animal is handed over, he still has to pay back the debt of having borrowed that article. It's part of custodian agreement law in Bava Kamma. Okay? So, what does the borrower basically say to the owner? He said, look, this claim wouldn't have availed you anything because in the final analysis, you would have had to pay it from choice property. Since the animal is muad, you would have been compelled to pay even if it was hidden away. So, okay, so that argument is good, except what happens if the guy doesn't have any other property? Then they would have seized this ox. Then the owner had a good argument because he said, you should have given the ox to me. I could have hid it in a way or taken care of it. I didn't have the property, choice property or cash to give him. This was my only asset that I've lent you. So the Gemara concludes that the borrower is going to tell the owner the following. Okay, let me just tell you what it is. Just as I'm liable to give to you, the ox to you, I'm liable to give to the damaged party or the court on account of the teaching of Rav Nassan, for it's been taught in a brisa, for when scripture we can claim that if one has a claim of a mana against his fellow, and his fellow in turn has a claim of mana against his fellow, against the third person, from where can we derive that we take the mana from this one, in other words, the debtor's debtor, and give it directly to the first one, the original creditor, bypassing the second creditor? For the Torah states, and he shall give it to the one that is guilty. This is in Numbers chapter 5, verse 7. Okay, so what are we saying here, guys? Is that basically Rav Nassan's rule tells us that since the borrower is liable to the owner and the owner is liable to a damaged party, the borrower is himself liable to the damaged party. Since he's obligated to deliver the ox to the damaged party, the owner cannot complain that the ox was given to him. So what it's saying is like follows. I borrow money from Gavin, but Gavin borrowed money from Kevin. Okay, so if I owe Gavin, Kevin can claim that for himself because Gavin owes Kevin anyway. So the damaged party of the court can just seize it to the debtor's debtor. That's what Rav Nassan teaches. So the borrower is saying to the owner, look, doesn't matter. According to Rav Nassan teaches, if you owe money, I have to give it to whom you owe money to because I owe money to you. I acknowledge I owe you money, but then I have to give it to who you owe money to. Still owe. Even if it's your only asset and you don't pay from choice property. All right, guys, we did cover a lot of ground. Thank you for the share. I hope you were satisfied.